Okay, what the hell is up with OBS? It suddenly just started acting like someone's calling on it. What the hell? Hi everyone, I'm Airier, and today we'll be checking out Star Wars Warhammer 40K Episode 44, The Light Flickers, Part 2 by a fan with too much time. This might seem like a weird time to say I'm a little shocked, but normally when I do an intro, it's about 10 minutes of me failing to say the first word in the title. It doesn't matter if I've done something multiple times for over a year. Overly Sarcastic Productions. I'm looking at you on this one. I don't usually get the numbers right, or the words, or my name sometimes. Yeah. So doing it live and suddenly getting it right is weird to me. I'm just putting myself in a weird mood today. I guess that's fine, because we're going to be jumping into what I'm really hoping is the Darth Sidious versus that asshole fight. And I'm not entirely sure if I mean a certain Inquisitor or anyone else, because frankly, this is going to be either really cool or fan is going to pull a fan and immediately get in there, have them talk, about to strike, and move to a different location. You know, this is fan we're talking about. I think I know exactly what's about to happen, and it's not what I'm hoping. Oh, God. He would do that just to have fun with dicking around people. Yeah. More importantly, I'm going to see what happens. I'm pretty sure I'll enjoy it regardless, even if it does come with a giant case of why. You know, the standard fan writing experience. All joking aside, I'm actually really looking forward to this. We're going to jump in. Also, everyone here in the chat live, nice. Ooh, Hobbit fan and Burb. Sup? And Jack? Lemon R Squid. Ooh, the Legion of Boom. Honestly, if that's not actually a real thing, I will be so disappointed. And if it isn't a real thing, someone fix that. Also, I should probably actually put this on. Yeah, there we go. For some reason, I thought I wasn't subscribed for a bit. I was like, wait, what? No, I am. Ooh, also, fan is at 14,000 subscribers. Like, it's awesome, but also, why so few? He should get more. Fix that. If you haven't already, why? Just wondering about it. So we're going to jump right in. And fan mentioned in the chat, we are never learn knowledge, eat the pie, for I am cake. But I think the cake is a lie, so you should probably not take a bite. Not sure where this is going, but I'm terrified to find out. And if it's a reference to whatever's about to happen here, he would do that. I'm not sure how, but he would. The light flickers. Why do I feel like this is from Aliens for some reason? It's probably the atmospherics. I never actually saw Aliens.
Ayla Sakura's whispered exhalation
she's
seemed
still
to
alive?
ripple through the suffocating air of the rent and ruined makeshift prison. Behind her cerulean eyes, Ayla's very spirit was awash in a storm of emotions which threatened to tear her asunder, even more than she already was. Her beaten...
Well, I mean, if it helps, you're probably going to be literally torn asunder too in a few minutes, so... Progress? At this point, I'm more or less assuming her plot armor has run out, because she has seen Sidious, and I don't think Fan is going to do the big reveal on the main stage just yet for him. Or he is, and that's also a good reason for her to die en masse right now.
form lay sprawled on the ground, shattered in flesh, soul left ringing in the wake of what she even now bore witness to. Looming before her were the very avatars of her worst nightmares. Darth Sidious, the malevolent puppet master behind the galaxy's most recent galactic war, and Inquisitor Tar Wyler, the inscrutable, grinning monster who hailed from another universe entirely. The former's lips pulled back in that horrific expression that Ayla had learned to fear. The Inquisitor holding aloft a rapier that seemed to drip with abyssal fire. Both semblances of evil seemed...
Now, I've only ever seen the movie Sidious. I know a bit about the comic and the expanded universe versions of him. So I'm assuming, since Fan just knows more about Star Wars than I am, the dripping fire thing, was that Sidious she was describing? Because I thought it was. Is that something he could just do, or is that more just her impression of him in the Force? Either way, this is probably just pointing out I don't know nearly enough about Star Wars. Time to go binge something on Wikipedia.
so engrossed in their
And it was
newfound
Weiler's rapier?
rivalry, so locked by their mutual challenge, that they paid her, broken and inconsequential as she was, no mind
Oh
at
shit,
all.
she might survive this, or just be a
felt
viewer?
some form of gratitude for that, but the sensation was fleeting, cast out of her the instant the two men chose to engage each other. The moment was as sudden as the arrival of an unexpected death, and twice as shocking. Ayla watching as the two approached each other and paused. Weiler's
Oh no, why is that in my head? I have something I need to confess right now. As soon as Fan described them as approaching each other, I went the JoJo meme where it's like, oh, you're approaching me? Except it's just two Dios fighting each other. I feel like I'm losing points for even bringing it up. It's in my head now, and I can't unthink it. So I'm spreading to everyone else to suffer with me.
His weapon roiled and moaned as he held it casually in one hand. Sidious tooled and moaned, approached each other and paused. Weiler's weapon roiled and moaned as
Fan, this is 40K from Weiler's side. And we've already seen he's fine with doing fucked up things, including the flesh cloak enthusiast he had in his basement. I just want to clarify, moaning is just you taking artistic license and not an indication that it's a demon and or person servitor weapon. Because this is 40K, that is something I need to ask. That's an artistic license, not an actual physical action, right? You know what? I'm actually going to not hope for an answer on this one because, yeah, I think he'll just choose the answer that hurts me the most.
As he held it casually in one hand, Sidious's two blood-shaded sabers humming at either side of the Dark Lord's shrouded, black-robed body. The men seemed to flicker then, like black candle flames caught in a nearby breath. And by the time Ayla realized that their contest had truly begun, the two shadows had already exchanged.
Oh, what's that in the background?
Realized that their contest had truly begun. The two shadows had already exchanged several empowered blows. Gust.
Oh, so Fan has very faint fighting sound effects in the background. Look, it sounded like crumbling rubble and a clash of blades. That's actually really neat because she's not focusing on it so well. So even though you could hear the sound effect from her perspective and he edited it in, it's also not the main focus because she's not able to entirely focus on it, mentioning she only noticed after it happened. That's actually really interesting.
Of hurricane-like wind buffeted out from their collisions, throwing Jedi, wounded and corpses alike across the floors and into the walls.
Yep.
Their duel commenced with a savagery that was a study in contrasts, like a painting in which the brightest of whites clashed with the darkest of blacks, showing Ayla shades of shadow.
So this be a
she
fight
had
in the
never
darkness
even
with flashing
conceived
blades almost?
of. Darth Sidious brandished twin crimson lightsabers, their blades glowing like demonic eyes in the strange murk that was rapidly consuming the 9th floor.
I don't know why, but it feels like Fan is channeling so much of Luke's first fight against Vader on the old episode 2, where it's them in the bowels of Bespin in the dark where it starts, and it's just that entire slow build-up. Mostly because this is from her perspective, not theirs. If it was from theirs, it would probably feel a lot faster. But since she's out of it, she's down for the count, and we're getting a slower take because she can't take everything in. I love how we're getting the almost atmospheric, this is so fucked up vibe of people who are so far beyond what she could actually match right now, let alone if she was not literally broken, beaten, and lying on the floor, probably near dead. So, yeah. It's an interesting vibe to add to something that probably wouldn't be there from any other perspective.
Tarweiler's rapier, its blade a fragment of pitch darkness that shamed even the night, seemed to consume light itself.
This might just be me. I really don't like AI. I can deal with it. I don't mind Fan using it. I just think it looks weird and doesn't... It just looks weird. I don't mind the solid, flat ones he uses so much because they're a little more contained. But the ones that move just highlight how bad some of them are. Personal opinion. Sometimes the voicing are better for certain aspects. Fans playing with it, it's a tool. I don't really care too much. Some just look better than others.
Screaming through the air with each swing, leaving black arcs of fire in its wake.
You truly believe that your childish sorcery can match the might of the Inquisition?
Wyler sneered. The words spat out even as his rapier clashed with Sidious's lightsabers, spawning showers of malignant sparks which seemed almost alive as they flailed and flared to the steel ground.
Arrogance. Ha! Ever the folly of the uninitiated.
Oh. Wyler's voice was good, and honestly, I still think Fan's doing that one, but I could hear the solidness that comes with an AI voice on Sidious. It's not bad. It does hit his voice well, but this is just my take on AI voicing. It has a very flat level, which is great if you're doing someone talking through a medium that would distort their voice. Like a helmet if they're an alien species translating through there, which Fan has done, or someone wearing a helmet, for example, like a normal person. Either way, it gives an alien aspect through a distortion or a human aspect through a distortion. So the muting of the emotional range to get down to a more steady, solid level isn't as noticeable. For the Palpatine voice, it is, though.
Sidious retorted, maneuvering his dual blades in intricate arcs, a graceful
Love the sound
dance
effect
of
usage.
death which shamed Ayla just to see it.
My order has long mastered the mysteries of the universe. We do not need to brute force our way through it. The Force...
Again, this is one of those, I'm not entirely sure if this is my lacking Star Wars knowledge. Does Palpatine actually know that, or is he just fucking around because it's Palpatine? Okay, never mind. It's probably both.
obeys, for it is our right to command it.
The Sith Lord boasted, pressing his attack as he weightlessly slid and leapt about, never striking at the Inquisitor directly, always seeking to subvert Wyler's counterstrikes or offensives.
And Fan has obviously played the good Battlefront games where that's exactly how Sidious moved, floating everywhere. Well done, Fan. I actually really like it. I'm not even sure that's intentional, but it does fit.
Air around them surged with an invisible pressure that Ayla could almost hear. And, to the surprise of her bloodshot eyes, Sidious was doing what none of them had been able to. He was pressing Tarwyler, gaining gradual control
Is he,
of their
though?
mutual movement as he kept pace
Are
with the
either of them
previously
actually fighting all out
untouchable
yet?
Imperial. Both combatants were clearly augmenting their physical abilities with techniques based within the immaterial worlds around them, empowering themselves such that the physical universe seemed to scream around them in its attempt to keep pace.
I mean, if anything, it should literally be screaming with the shit Tarwyler, wow. Tarwyler is pulling around, because that would literally be the definitely not Chaos Sorcerer equivalent of things that definitely will happen. Because we all know he's definitely not a Chaos Sorcerer. That would be silly and well, I would say obvious, but he definitely doesn't see it. It's not like he's an arrogant son of a bitch who's definitely been corrupted by chaos and they're just laughing at him, thinking he's on the side he agrees on, but it really is just a plant. That's not something Chaos has done multiple times before in documented 40K lore, to the point where it's almost a trope.
They moved faster than Ayla's trained eyes could follow, blurs of lethal intent shattering themselves against one another, held intact through their impacts with the same forces which made those strikes so severe. Wyler's rapier stabbed and slashed with a serpentine grace, his movements winding and indirect, like a snake's coils folding under itself, his every maneuver punctuated with a violent and sudden lurch forward. Meanwhile, Sidious's lightsabers wove a web of red, creating a wall of light that kept pace with the black serpent fang that was Wyler's weapon.
Okay, this is going to be a writing geek out moment, but before that, I mentioned the entire thing about moving AI not looking as good as solid static ones. This is a good example. You could see earlier on when the hand has a deformity where it's literally indented on the index finger. Better than most hands in AI for a long time, but still obvious. But this one actually looks pretty solidly good. I like it. But the one reason I really wanted to highlight this, the way Fan is describing the fight is something that you kind of got hints at the entire time, but highlights a really cool fact. For Wyler, it's brutal, fast, hard movements he's hitting in. But when Fan is describing Palpatine, it's flowy, floating, literally floating as well, movements that are just showing that he's, almost looks like he's playing with him. And I kind of love this. Not just because it's the difference between the two fighting styles, but it's showing that a lot of the prequel fighting styles were very showy. They're very floaty and descriptive of how to really take advantage of the fact that they had the technology at the time to make fights look really, really flashy, instead of hard, solid hits that needed to be begun and stop at a very certain movement, because if they didn't, they would literally break the props that they were anchoring a lot of the effects on. And Palpatine is showing exactly that kind of overly descriptive fighting style that really is probably just there because it's a rush for him to have fun with it. I mostly just attribute everything Palpatine does to, I could do it better, but this is more fun. Yeah.
Catching and deflecting every blow thrown his way. Their conjoined arts of combat could have made small the likes of even Master Yoda. At least, that was
later.
what Ayla believed as she watched on.
Well, she ain't wrong.
Was buckling around them, waves of unseen power rippling and shimmering through the air, tearing open walls and rending apart the floors above them. The destruction and contortion of the space around the defeated Jedi only seemed to accelerate then, as the physicality of the contest between the two shadow beings suddenly ruptured into overt displays of their respective dark arts.
Of course, there's the laser effects and the lightsaber sound effects, but it almost sounds like there's a rippling fire effect in the background that Fan has just as a stand-in for the blades being on. That's a cool little sound effect.
Sidious bounding up to the ceiling as he absorbed a particularly brutal strike, holding himself upside down there as he extended his arms, cackling and laughing as waves of force lightning unfurled from his body and rained down. Wyler did not miss a beat, dancing back, bolts of power bouncing off his blade and psychic radiance as he spun.
Of course, he could do the blade deflecting lightning thing.
Physically with Sidious's arcane display. It almost gratified Ayla to see the Inquisitor be suddenly overwhelmed before countering with torrents of black fire. The hungering flames carried aloft in an explosion of psychic malevolence which drove back the Sith lightning. And again, Ayla became aware that her surroundings seemed to waver and distort as the competition between them raged on. Reality itself protesting the unnatural forces being unleashed within it. The walls
the audio changed.
caved and folded, Jedi bodies both alive and dead being swallowed up into those metal confines as the steel around them seemed to breathe and grow.
I've heard people describe Palpatine, I don't think in this version, but in other, both fiction and people talking about canon, as a wound in the Force, and most Sith that way. But when you come to someone who's using the warp, that is quite literally a wound in, well, the reality of anything. So having two people do this is basically creating their own little warp rift. I wonder if we're going to get the first warp storm in the Star Wars side. Just based off two high-level Sith going, well, fuck this shit. I doubt it, if only because I don't think Sidious wants to give that away yet. But I don't think Wyler would mind if that happened. Although he might mind if it's revealed that someone had enough power to do that. Because that's not exactly part of his plan. But would he care if he actually has an enemy worth using it on?
Expanding and morphing as if chemically swollen from the abyssal alchemies which had been turned loose here. Even away from the walls, Ayla could feel the floor buckling and churning under her, melting and reforming without the aid of heat. Her heart hammered as she looked back at their horrific duel, wondering how her order was ever meant to stand before such twisted and unknowable powers.
I mean, you should just do the obvious thing that kills everyone with too much power. You throw them off a cliff. Because gravity beats everything. And yes, that is actually how he died in canon. I'm referring to the third, now sixth movie, and I'm sticking to that one. It's Dark Souls logic, man. Doesn't matter how powerful you are. You fall more than 10 feet, you die.
The clashing between the two became so rapid and so fearsome that the sound of it resembled a thrum, the intensity building and building, but it could not build forever, nor did it. Sidious drove down into the Inquisitor, splitting black flames with his red swords, twirling, carried on winds of dark power as he slapped the crimson bars of his weapons against Tarweiler's dedicated defense.
Fan? I was not expecting you to talk about how Sidious was plunging into Weiler in this one, or slapping bars with him. Are you okay? Because what the hell, man?
Defense. For his own part, despite having no second weapon, the Inquisitor was not struggling to keep up, at least no more than Sidious was. Ayla watched them lock swords, watched Tarweiler kick Sidious in the chest, dropping his rapier into a lowered posture, secondary hand slapping against the back of the hilt, and launching into a rising lunge that the Dark Lord of the Sith only avoided by cartwheeling back and out of the way.
I wish I could hear what his thoughts on this are.
It was clear by this point in the fight that Sidious knew every single form of lightsaber combat, with the possible exception of the latest form, Vapac.
I have to wonder about this bit of AI art. Was the entire thought process here Imperial Voldemort versus Sith Anakin? I have so many questions. It's a cool picture, but also, okay.
But where Sidious had mastered the battle arts of the Jedi and Sith, this Tarweiler fought not with the martial teachings of 2 orders, but with the lethal wisdom of several hundred, forming out of his fighting style a chaotic amalgamation composed of very nearly every single sword fighting technique that humanity had cultivated in 10,000 years of constant escalating war.
Okay, this is a personal gripe that has no actual point to fans writing, because this is a trope that most people writing combat do. The entire thing about the more styles you know, the better you are. It's like, no, it actually makes fighting worse. You find something you're good at, and then you're good at it because there are certain things that are good at certain options. For example, if you want to stretch, you use yoga or Tai Chi. If you want to actually do damage, you punch someone and figure out the rest later. There's a reason you don't actually play for just... Sorry, this is just one of those gripes I've been on lately because everyone describes knowing fighting styles as making you a better fighter. It helps so you know how to do something, but it doesn't actually matter the style. That's not how that works. Knowing how to fight makes you a better fighter. Knowing more ways to fight gives you more options. And if you're consciously thinking about anything, it doesn't matter. Fan is not making a mistake here. This is exactly what most writing does. It's almost a trope at this point to add the idea that, okay, he knows more styles, so he's a better fighter, as opposed to he's just really good at what he does, so he can react well. This is a nerd raid point on me because I've heard it misused so often. It's just kind of getting annoying. It's not a problem with the writing. It's just more of the concept of this trope in any fiction whatsoever. It's just,
It was within this melee storm of violence, this bloodthirsty exchange of galactically assembled martial prowess, that the Imperial Inquisitor eventually gained the upper hand. It happened so quickly that Ayla was not able to spot the exact moment that the rapier found its mark, somehow sliding past Sidious's guard and scoring a searing line across the Sith Lord's chest. The two broke
is it going to be enough to reveal
like
who he is?
Opposing magnets.
So far, no one else has figured that out.
His monster's
At least
grin
Ayla
as
hasn't.
He and Ayla watched Sidious rise from a crouch, a growing line of black flames spreading from his chest, lighting his hidden face with darkness.
Wait, what?
Now
Darkness?
It was
No, black
Tarweiler
flames.
who cackled. Ayla feeling a strange despair, realizing at long last that not a single being of her galaxy could stand against the predators that had come from somewhere else.
I mean,
Even
she's
the
wrong, but it
Sith
makes sense to
were
draw that conclusion.
ultimately no match, though one would not know it from the undaunted posture of the burning Dark Lord.
Your lightsabers may cauterize flesh, but the fires of the warp consume the soul.
Wyler hissed in victorious elation.
Yeah, you're saying that to someone who has a lot of souls being consumed. It's like, oh no, you have taken one of them. Moving on.
You are finished.
Nope.
Food for the warp.
Sidious looked down at the flames.
He's just gonna
and
brush it out.
grimaced, not from the wound, but from the realization that the duel had moved to a terrain where physical skill alone would not suffice to serve his purposes.
Biggest
His
brag
eyes
right now would be to
glinted
brush it
like
out.
shards of dead stars as he lowered his glowing weapons, deactivating them and having them vanish up the sleeves of his robes.
Oh?
He was preparing for a different kind of battle.
Going full on
Tar
force power is
could
nice.
see this as well and looked upon the Sith Lord with mock pity.
Unable to accept the inevitable. A shame. You will die flailing against a fate no one, not even I, can prevent now.
Wait, he would actually say that? I get why Fan has I keep saying that. Tar Wyler saying, I can't prevent this fate now. Because he's basically trying to brag that I have given you a wound you cannot heal from. Even I can't, and I'm greater than you. I gotta stop doing that voice. It actually hurts. How will this fan do it? I have no idea. I'm assuming a lot of cough drops. But, I actually just answered my own question in my head. The reason he's doing it is because Palpatine doing anything about it whatsoever immediately would put Tar Wyler on the back foot. Oh, so it's a literal perfect straight line to lead into it. Okay, that makes sense.
The Inquisitor mocked. Sidious did not respond. At least, not with words which Tar Wyler could understand. Instead,
Why do we have Darth Red Foreman? Okay. Yeah, the moving version is just I can't jive with them.
not with words which Tar Wyler could understand. Instead, he seemed to look down and speak to the flames themselves, his words strange and clipped. Wyler watched, his keen mind recording every word, though even then, his arrogance was supreme. The daemon fire he summoned was born of the most insatiable parts of the immaterium, children of a hunger so intense, even the dark gods made scarce use.
Oh. Would being in a different galaxy change that because there might not be the same level of depravity to draw from? That would be an interesting way to look at.
Of it. Wielding it was to dance the line between existence and utter obliteration, and he had seen word-bearers fail to coax the flames to stop. So Tar watched and
I mean,
nothing
word
more
bearers,
as
or,
Sidious
yeah, word bearers failing is
spoke
kind of a
the
thing.
hideous and lost tongue
It's almost
of
its
the
own trope.
Balk. Masters of the Black Flame, speakers of the chaos. Tar
Fan is
had
really
seen
building this up.
sorcerous attempts to put out the flame, to smother it, to deny it, to bribe it into release, to beg it for mercy.
The more contemptuous and the more easily Palpatine manages to snuff out the flame at this point, the more it is going to unnerve Wyler. And I kind of love that because it has been a giant pile of the Sith are winning. No, well, not the Sith, but the Darksiders are always winning. So it would be nice to see that someone in the 40K side who's not Grievous, who has been off screen for so long, technically even, no, not as long as Palpatine, would get a good showing of, oh yeah, there's shit over here too. But I'm wondering if Fan would go for some big gesture or just something as little as, oh, you ruined my coat.
But
Either way,
Sidious Did none of these...
Kintik Hadzuska Odkaratak. Kintik Hadzuska.
Now he's going to sit sorcery.
Gestion 6. Gestion 6.
Sidious spoke, summoning control of the black flame. This, his communion with the dark side. Finishing the incantation, Sidious drew in a deep breath, and as he did, the flames were torn from his chest, entering his nostrils, and with flares of power which could be seen within his shadowed eyes, the fire was gone.
Okay, we'll admit the only thing that could have been better than my hope of him just snuffing it out on a whim would be actually eating it. Good choice on that one.
And the Inquisitor was left speechless. For a moment, at least.
How?
Tar
I was
finally
hungry.
managed.
The flames are unquenchable. They do not relinquish prey. How?
He demanded, raising
Obviously,
his
I am
rapier
not
and
prey.
pointing it at the Dark Lord of the Sith. Darth Sidious, resplendent in his darkness, did not respond right away, shadows deepening all around him as he finished breathing in the breath he had taken. He exhaled darkness in place of smoke, his breath long and dragged out. Wyler's eyes darting, but unafraid. When Sidious spoke again, he did so in a deep, demonic voice that drew what little breath Ayla had
Showing the lack of
out
humanity.
of her
Nice.
lungs.
Or sentience.
The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities the weak and short-sighted consider to be
Unnatural.
unnatural.
Tar edged back, the air seeming to rumble without noise.
If Twilight had standard Nosferatu. That's all I can see right now. I just... I can't stand the movement. I really can't.
He knew what this was. Just beyond
See,
the
that actually
veil,
looks like Sidious.
on the other side of the border which protected the material plane,
Demon.
the warp was roiling, writhing, scratching, and tearing at the seams. His beady black eyes widened as he realized for the first time that he was not dealing with anything as simple as a powerful witch sorcerer.
You are strong in the dark side.
Said the Sith, stepping forward and
wouldn't
dragging
even understand the
every
reference.
shadow in the room with him.
Worthy of the mantle.
He purred, making the darkness around them shudder.
Is he gonna
and
try and take
drawing
him next?
Closer.
What are you... Ah!
Wyler began to say, before crying out, staggering, one hand holding his blade out towards Sidious, while the other suddenly clutched at his head, covering one of his hateful eyes.
Oh?
Ayla could feel it as well, a conduit, a powerful channel opening between them. Like water calls and connects to water, so too did the black hearts of these creatures connect and flow into one another.
Huh? I'm assuming this is more of 40K side is what I would normally say, except this is Palpatine doing it. So it's more on the Star Wars side of how to use Sith bullshittery. What? I'm assuming he's trying to possess him, or is this just like one of those resonance things that I have no idea about because it's in the EU and I never read it?
Yes, I can see it.
Whoa.
Crooned the Dark Lord of
Oh, that
the
was Palpatine's
Sith.
voice?
Such power you have,
Oh, I see her now.
yet still a slave. Your chains, unbroken.
He continued, stepping closer still.
I am no slave.
Well,
Wyler spat
Kinda.
back, saliva frothing his lips as he attempted to drive apart the strange connection.
I am an Inquisitor, a Lord Inquisitor of the Imperium of Man. Billions live and die by my whim. I command battle fleets and soldiers would shame anything you have ever wrought.
I absolutely love this because as grand as this sounds, everything I'm thinking in the background is in 40K, you have two choices if you're a human. You're a slave to the Emperor, functionally, or to the powers that be. You know, those assholes. There is no good option. Either way, you are listening to someone else telling you what to do. He's actually deluded himself into thinking he's his own master. And that's not the case, ever. Now, I don't think anyone on the Star Wars side would realize how wrong his boast is. But if there was a single custodian back there, they'd be like, yep, that looks like a good candidate for a bolter round to the head. Whether it's a succeed or not, nah. But it would be definitely a consideration at that point.
My authority is the authority of a god!
Which puts them above you.
In defiance.
And yet,
The Dark Lord
You are not a god.
seeming to almost whisper the words, although each syllable cut
syllable?
through the air.
Is he actually going to call him out on it?
Blade, easily heard.
it is not your authority. It is the authority of your dead god.
He actually said it!
Silence!
Oh, shit!
Tar, slashing his sword through the air to punctuate the statement.
I am
Dead
the
is...
greatest inquisitor in the entire Zektek
Wait, did he actually...
Statement. Snapped Tar, slashing
Yeah,
his
yeah.
sword
Did he actually
through
just say what I
the
think he
air
said?
to punctuate the statement.
I am the greatest inquisitor in the entire Zektek sector.
Wow. That actually sounds more pathetic. He went from, I have the authority of a god, to fall back on, which is, okay, yeah, you're taking someone else's authority, down to, I am the greatest in this one sector. That's a big downgrade in power from, I am the greatest, to, I have the power to talk to my boss, to, in this area specifically, I am the strongest. Why do I keep using that voice? I really need to stop. It is actually causing me physical pain. Fan, how the hell did you do that? Because I don't think you're using AI on him. Okay, probably for the same reason I keep doing it. It's actually a really fun voice to use. Did my mouse just died? I was wondering why I was having trouble moving it. Ah, there we go.
And soon, the whole galaxy.
The shark-toothed man railed.
It's like saying, I am the strongest person on this block. When there's no day today. When there's also no one there.
Retorted.
And yet how true would that be if the rest of your precious Inquisition knew?
Not very.
Sidious, stunning Tar with the breadth of the knowledge this connection had evidently bestowed.
Knew what you really are.
The Sith finished with a grin.
Oh! So either Palpatine just bluffed really well because of context set here, he had pre-knowledge based on other intelligence activities, or he just ripped out a lot of useful information from Tar. And out of all of those, the last one is probably the one that scares Tar the most, and indicated by him being a little surprised there. That actually is really fun.
The Inquisitor could feel. The man could not be allowed to live, or know anything more, Tarweiler determined, gritting his teeth and furrowing his smooth brow into an...
Oh, God. Also, Fan jokingly asked if he should commission me for a Tar episode. Oh, God, I would lose my voice. I have to call off work because I couldn't talk. I suddenly am okay with this.
An ocean of wrinkles.
I am the Inquisition!
The psyker
If no one else is there.
throwing himself forward in a charging lunge. But he did not complete the attack, seeming to come up short just before striking Sidious, struggling
Crazy.
against an invisible force. Gritting his teeth, grunting as he was frozen mid-charge, Tarweiler pressed forward with all his might. The tip of his black rapier beginning to smoke, only an inch or so from Sidious's chest. The Dark Lord smiled, stepping closer and forcing Tar to slide back, the end of the rapier now glowing red hot. With a sudden burst of movement, Sidious snapped his left hand out to his side. The rapier, following, suddenly jerked out of Tarweiler's grip and spit.
And now we see Palpatine getting slightly more serious. Because he stopped using his weakest thing ever, using a sword. Or, well, lightsaber. So basically what I'm getting is, due to Sith power bullshit, he caught the blade, or just passively stopped it on an invisible shield, smoked the blade, tore it out of his hands, and then moved his arms. Well, I guess he moved his arm when he tore it out, but still, the sheer level of, okay, that's nice, is awesome right now. I hate rooting for Palpatine, but at the same time, I kind of am at this point. Just because Tar has felt so impenetrable in his position, with the one exception when he nearly got killed by a Jedi way less powerful than him because he was playing someone much weaker and, you know, wasn't paying attention.
Hitting across the room and clatter against the wall. In the same instant, his right arm thrust forward, right into Tarweiler's chest, exuding a force great enough to fold Durasteel, but only managing to shove the Inquisitor back about 6 feet. Staggered, but swiftly rising and regaining his composure, Tarweiler reached out to his right, extending his will towards his sword, but paused then as Sidious shook his head.
Why let blades decide what malevolence should settle?
The Sith Lord suggested an insidious proposal which challenged Sith Lord.
Sorry, I just heard the voice and I cringed to miss what he said.
Why let blades decide what malevolence should settle?
Oh, why let blades decide? For a second, I thought he said Weiler blades decide. It's like, that's not... Yeah. It's just the standard level that the AI does. I just...
The Sith Lord suggested an insidious proposal which challenged Tar's most vaunted asset.
Really, fan? I didn't even catch that. An insidious proposal... Oh, yes. Sidious has made an insidious proposal from Sidious. That's quite disturbing, even. I'm not going to finish it with the third version of the words insidious or Sidious or... It's so on the nose. I don't even think you realize. I think you did that by accident. Oh, dear God.
His psychic might.
Very well. But remember, when you find yourself screaming, your soul rent apart in the tempest of the warp. Recall this moment. Remember that it was you who challenged me and brought this upon yourself.
I don't think you're going to do that, Weiler.
Said as he drew his hand back in and crossed his arms over his chest, forming an aquila, though each of his fingers was notably spread. Darth Sidious raised a hand almost...
Wait, the Aquila is basically... Oh, he's essentially doing 8 points instead of the Aquila. So instead of the wings, it would be 8 points of a star. Okay, he's going to a chaos symbol. Okay.
Daintily to his mouth and laughed.
Clearly you have a talent for speaking threads, but I am afraid that now I must teach you when to heed them.
Said the dog.
Oh, God, that's not good. We have Palpatine at home is currently on the screen right now, or Palpatine with a NyQuil kicks in. Take your pick.
Dark Lord, raising his hands, touching his thumbs together,
I have no idea where this is from,
and forming a pyramid shape at the center of his chest. For a moment, they seemed to hold, paused, one staring the other down. But they were only still in a purely physical sense, as Ayla could feel.
Oh, she's still there, yeah.
Behind their dark, burning eyes,
I actually forgot about her.
The Force was splitting and being churned in a way which defiled every teaching of the Jedi. Lightning burst from Sidious like a foul raiment of destructive energy. And in response, a corona of brilliant, shimmering flame exploded like twin wings from Tarweiler's back. The fires black, but edged in a brilliant gold. A fraction of an instant later, and the duel shifted.
Wait, is he actually still channeling a bit of the
to
Emperor?
a metaphysical plane entirely.
Ayla's eyes wide and bleeding as she continued to bear the burden of the witness.
Yeah, you might want to
Sidious
run.
Unleashed phantasmal Sith illusions. Demonic constructs of the dark side aimed to disorient and terrify.
Are they illusions,
now
though?
Coming close.
And that's actually not just a random thought on my part. I'm actually wondering, is he just strictly doing illusions, or is this physical to someone who is fighting more on the warp side? Because it seems like this battle is not entirely physical, so there's an entire possibility it's an illusion up until it bites you.
Closer to true life than ever before. Wyler retaliated by ripping open the very fabric of reality, exposing both himself and his opponent to the roiling madness of the warp itself. Visions and nightmares clashed in a realm beyond corporeal
But would that be as
understanding.
dangerous here as
a
in
contest
the 40K
not
side?
of strength or martial skill, but of will, knowledge, and blackest insight. The Force was tearing itself apart, devouring its own body as the two men commanded it against each other. And the room contorted violently, rising on contorting, corrupted metal until it was no longer the 9th floor beneath the ground.
See, this is actually good usage of AI art. When you're doing dreamlike distortions that are intentionally unrealistic, that actually is really good usage. This looks good. The faces that are basically just doing a static shot with slightly more motion as they're just getting different angles, that is not so much good. This is a great usage of it. This looks cool.
Rather, 9 stories high into the
Yeah.
air. A twisting and
9
still
stories? Shit.
rising tower of metal scrap that reached agonizingly towards the heavens as reality was suffocated nearly onto the death of all logic. Ayla Sakura, her consciousness teetering on the edge of oblivion, realized then the unspeakable horror of her predicament.
You're still there?
Predicament of
Yeah.
her entire order and republic. Compared to this power, they were all but mere moths caught between 2 raging infernos, each capable of incinerating not just the body, but the very essence of any caught in their way.
I'm not even sure if this is AI art or not, but it kind of looks like it. 1, really good choice on this one. 2, she thinks there's only 2 raging infernos that could do that. That's funny. There's at least Anakin if he goes full-on training, because he's essentially the Star Wars Emperor version. And Kaon, who I've been told explicitly is such an OC do not steal in canon 40K, that he's probably at that level as well.
As Sidious and Wyler continued their unspeakable contest, now a clash of forbidden lore and dark power as much as one of weapons, Ayla felt the Force itself shuddering, as if in
this is probably about
anticipation of
Kubik.
some
Looks good.
terrible, irreversible fracture
Kubik.
that was about to occur. Regardless of who emerged victorious, she understood one chilling fact. Both men were shepherds of cataclysm, architects of the apocalypse of not just this
Multiple.
world, but countless others.
Yep.
Their darkness was not merely personal, but cosmic. Not merely physical, but metaphysical. And
The magic side, yeah.
as she lay there, flinching at each crackle of dark energy, and each scornful exchange of powers entirely antithetical to her own, a final thought intruded upon her fading awareness.
Oh?
She and the Jedi had never even stood a chance. This war had been over before it started, and
Eh? I get where she's coming from, and I understand why fans do it. I even agree with him that this is the conclusion she would reach because she had so misjudged the situation. She had thought, okay, it's a dark side user who's a Sith, not, oh, that's what that is. Because the Sith they had fought were just the throwaway apprentice of apprentices. Maul, Ventress. There's probably others I'm not thinking about. Powerful, but even Dooku was more powerful in EU or the Legends versions than anything else. The movies, he was more just a general.
as despair consumed the soul of Ayla Sakura, so too did darkness consume the waking world, and she fell away, knowing no more.
Kubik, what were those images behind? We got a Keeper of Secrets. A great unclean one. Maybe not a I don't know. That's not a Keeper of Secrets. It's one of the burbs from Tzeentch. Considering orange, I'm assuming that's the Corn Demon. I can't really tell what it is. It looks like maybe one of the Walkers. And pink is, or the purple is probably Slaanesh, but I have no idea what that's supposed to be. Honestly, until I saw the distorted form of the Great Unclean one, I wasn't even sure what these were other than just colorations. Huh. And then, wait, those are, behind Sidious, those are hands. Oh, those are actual bodies. It's probably the consumed Jedi. That is a very interesting take. If he's actually consuming them, what would that look like on their end?
World, and she fell away, knowing no more.
Now, did she die, or did something actually happen? Or are we going to get someone walking around in the warp now? Or I guess the Star Wars warp. I have absolutely no idea. Okay, that... It's not a bad image. I kind of like it. But it looks like the same person with different clothing options. It's the nose. Slightly different noses. Still better than a lot of other things. That almost feels like he's ending the episode here, even though it's definitely not. Omega and Oracle Squad. That's what they're called? Oh. I guess we're back with the people running the space fight.
One of her slender hands slid across the exposed skin under her neural interface band, wicking away sweat with the act, and being forced to mentally negate the implied commands that the gesture issued to the Oracle computer system. A system that Omega was now very much a part of. Few.
Did Fenn record this when he was in an odd area? Because it sounds like his voice is more distorted than not. Or is that an intentional part because we're talking about someone with a neural interface, so that's his way of depicting it?
The previous battle simulations had pressed her this hard, and none of them, not a single one, had borne the stakes this game now held over her. Omega flicked her wrist, readjusting
I don't
the
realize
assault
or remember if
positions
she
of
did know that
countless
or not.
warships
I thought
of
she
the
figured it
act.
out.
Her commands then processed and disseminated by her team. In the black, insubstantial sea of the void,
Love the Star
Venators
Warp,
banked, their engines burning like dim stars in the endless night between worlds. Their weapons fired in rapid succession, a chorus of colored plasma raining like hail, splashing and shattering upon the skins of the behemoths all around them. And every few moments, one of those monsters they had warred against would swat a swathe of them out of the darkness, annihilating them with shells, cannons, and strafing lines of volatile energy. But the swarms of the Republic were many, and the gargantuan beasts of the Imperium were few.
And I love how in just a few words you have encapsulated the entire space fight. We have an entire horde of ants against an elephant. Honestly, the difference might actually not be that big, but you get the idea. It's just, yeah, they're going to kill a bunch of people, but we have more. And eventually, when you die, you can't replace that shit.
And Omega knew that she could win out with precision and ruthless application of the needed maneuvers. And so it had gone, with Omega and her many captains dueling against the Lord Admiral of the Imperium and the many lesser admirals beneath her, all of whom served as Omega's presumably simulated opponents. They exchanged blows, the ships and the steel of...
I think this is actually someone... Oh yeah, you can see the AI part right here. There's a sixth finger. Yeah. Actually, for AI, it's not that bad. Yeah, and there's a sixth one over here as well, where the joint doesn't quite match. Honestly, again, for AI, this is pretty good. But did you say the presumed ones?
Opponents. They exchanged blows. The ships simulate admirals beneath us dueling against the Lord Admiral of the Imperium and the many lesser admirals beneath her, all of whom served as Omega's presumably simulated opponents.
And considering this is coming from what looks like Omega's perspective, yeah, she definitely figured out that this is not a game.
They exchanged blows, the ships and the steel of their bodies acting as the blades of their sabers as they dueled each other back and forth, a dozen metaphorical rapiers clashing, each held in as many arms between the two of them. Nearly an hour had passed, and already 56 different critical moments had been reached, from small conflicts or skirmishes within the larger battle to heavy fighting and obviously prime priority engagements. No matter their apparent size, each and every single one of these 56 points had been situations which could change the flow of the battle and could have caused full reversals of her current momentum had even a single one soured badly enough. But Omega had managed to win or stalemate each and every single one so far, clearing her mind of all distractions, seeking only what needed to be done to survive every critical encounter as they occurred, always looking to implement her larger strategy whenever she could. At the end of the day, no matter what intelligence she was facing,
My problem with the earlier AI art Fan used for the Sith was that it had too much motion in the facial features, showing that it was obviously just moving between different emulations of it. With the exception of when the shoulder pads decide to start glowing briefly, this isn't bad.
At the end
right there, the sparks.
Day, no matter what
it's consistent enough, so it looks like they're looking at you when moving. And it's not bad usage.
She was facing, this battle, any battle, was just angles, numbers, possibilities, and probabilities. Nothing could overcome that fact, and that fact would not overcome Omega's will to see her small group remain whole.
Is this official?
All around her. Each one of the other clones that composed her impromptu family were struggling to keep pace with their young leader. A single moment, a tiny lapse, even a temporary hesitation could easily cost them 50 ships and tens of thousands of lives along with them. They all wanted to stay together just as badly as Omega. However, two factors kept them from matching the lethal speed and tactics of her moment-to-moment commands. Firstly, she was simply superior. With a grasp of physics and tactics which bordered on the preternatural, Omega was so apt at reading and noticing details and patterns that even the others in her group suspected that she may have somehow been cloned as a Force sensitive.
Oh, they were actually slightly aware of that. Oh, I thought that was like a big secret that, yeah, she's basically a Force sensitive and the only clone that got that. But if Fan is specifically highlighting, at least in this variation, they're suspecting it. Oh. Okay. I was under the impression that's a big reveal that came later, or that when they found out she was put into much higher custody, but no, okay, apparently not.
With an eye sharper than a vibroblade, and a mind born of the gene furnace that was what remained of Jango Fett's existence, Omega did not lank for decisiveness either, and her application of tactics was either immediately effective or quickly corrected. And yet, even with this advantage, there was something else holding the others back that Omega was not bound to. One after the other, the clone children of Omega's strategy command team came to a realization that their leader was simply blind to, perhaps even subconsciously choosing to not see what they had all realized.
It's not
this
a game.
Was not a simulation.
So not only is she not aware of it, but Fan is highlighting all the... See, I was taking it as she was aware because she was talking about the admiral and the lieutenants and saying simulate, but no. That's why he said it's Omega and Oracle Squad, because Oracle Squad is pointing out what she is intentionally blinding herself to. Because she's so smart, she's good at thinking around a problem she doesn't want to look at. Oddly enough, that is a problem a lot of incredibly intelligent people have. If they dismiss something from their mind, they could think around it by looking at other problems. So, yeah, it kind of works. Also, for anyone wondering in the chat, this is actually a canon Star Wars character named Omega. It's nothing to do with Alpharius, the Alpha Legion, or Omegon. It's just one of those funny little coincidences that just kind of works as far as I'm concerned. And Burb, you said, hey, if you love everything, please ignore all the visuals from now on. They're just going to something like black screen. Put up kitten, please. Probably not.
This was real. These
Also,
numbers
don't have a picture
were
of
real. The Armada was real. The Imperials were real. And the sacrifices that they were making to keep their momentum going and their victory assured was most certainly real. Tears dripped from unblinking eyes as commands were parsed and sent, hearts beating like leaden pumps in frail chests, every beat becoming harder and harder with each callous command they issued forth. But none, not one, had the heart or the will to tell Omega the truth.
It's a good thing there's not a history of Force users into a situation where they're completely unprepared, doing something rash. Otherwise, this entire situation might be a problem.
Or to even signal it. For while parts of them died as tens of thousands perished
She
at their
doesn't know
orders,
it's going to hit her all at once
it
later.
was clear from the narrowness of their lead that each and every single one had been a required loss for the sake of victory. And so, Omega, unknowing, innocent goddess of death, danced and spun her strategy over the convulsing, dying masses of Republic and Imperial ships. More and more their momentum was mounting. Further and further ahead did their victory take them, and all it had cost them to this moment was nearly 1.25 of their combined fleet strength. Most of those lost Republic ships did not meet their end in the direct
1.25. Now, I'm not sure in time or in terms of naval military numbers because you're in a trapped environment. But in terms of an army, if you lose 10%, that is, oh God, we have catastrophically failed numbers. So 1.25 here is a lot. Granted, it's not nearly as bad as some of the earlier numbers they had against the the 40K side. So progress, but that's still a lot.
battle that was occurring even now, however, for such mass losses in such a short amount of time would have been almost impossible to manage unless she had been trying to get her units obliterated. The whale-like behemoths of the Imperial fleet
was actually closer
circled
near
and spun
all for the
lazily
first
in the
encounter.
void sea, engines burning outlines into space like vast fins of fire as their enormous weapons belched.
And Hobbit mentioned
sure
this is
death
all
into
of the Republic
clouds
fleet?
and shoals
Oh.
of surrounding
Yeah, that's
Republic
bad.
vessels. But those overpowered weapons could only be so effective when overkill earned them nothing. And Omega had already adopted strategies to keep each single blast of their gargantuan guns from destroying an optimum number of her own ships.
Which is the best way to do it survivable
The
wise.
true lethal threat came from the vast line of even larger, stranger vessels who kept their distance from the body of the battle.
Oh.
Despite that distance, their participation was no less present.
Which
as they
ships are
fired
these?
Massive and varied weapons from their positions.
Probably the
creating a
older
myriad
clanker
of
ones.
destructive and
They just happen to have
debilitating
weird
effects
shit.
across the entire battlefield. Gravitational wave bombs rippled
Yep.
the very fabric of space-time in a visible way. Novatic detonations exploded in fiery violence, briefly resembling stars in their expanding brilliance. Ionized particulate torpedoes blossomed in ways which resembled brilliant fields of blue and purple flowers in the black backdrop of the battle, creating nebulas of crippling energies which could strip the functionality from a Venator like a hurricane wind could blow out a candle.
Sounds almost
The
like an
battlefield
ion shot there,
conditions
but more
continued
effective.
to change, and Omega continued to adapt. However, she did not seek out the distant, bombarding behemoths, calculating that the overall battle would be harmed by splitting her forces. Even now, as wedge-shaped Republic ships splintered and burst on waves of unseen gravitational energy, or were burnt molten in the embrace of sun-like explosions, the bleeding monsters of the Imperials began to die as well.
I just want to take a second to highlight that Fan has created such a perfect atmosphere at this point. It's not just his droning talk from the perspective of Omega, where we've had it highlighted through an Oracle squad that she has no idea that she's basically falling into the Ender's Game, which is exactly what Fan is intentionally doing here. Works perfectly. But that we have that solid music, almost at the clock-like high notes, with that drone beneath it, adding a sense of just dread and inevitability, with the muted explosions in the background representing the ships going. It just creates this overwhelming force of just drawing in a breath, because you could tell something is about to go wrong. Because you wouldn't highlight how she's winning every battle just to make it through if something wasn't about to happen. Mostly because that would be a writing mistake, and Fan has proven competent enough that I don't think he would do that. The reason it's a writing mistake is because if you're writing a scene of, and here is a normal existence during a battle and nothing happened that was out of expectation, you're doing it wrong. Because if something interesting doesn't happen, if you're not just getting the idea, you're giving a slice of life look, which for all I know that could be established right here, but I don't think Fan's leading into that because the context clues indicate that they're showing someone who's making sacrifices. So what will most likely happen is there's going to be a sacrifice she makes that others or either not agree with, or she will realize, oh shit, or in some way maybe make a choice that will obviously lead into that later, highlighting a moment of importance. Just because there's so many things going on, if you're not highlighting importance, you're wasting time. Again, slice of lifestyle writing, that's fine. That's what the point of it. This is not that.
And with each felled Imperial ship, much of their fleet strength would be bitten away. Each time an Imperial ship became too crippled by the ongoing battle or was destroyed by Republic vessels,
death by 1,000 cuts still counts as a death.
Other Imperial ships would break off from their battle positions, anchor the vessel brutally with large chains, and drag it away into screaming, swirling portals of blue and black energy.
Oddly enough, I kind of like the transitions that are being generated by the AI in this one. I'm kind of surprised about that.
Thus, breaking one vessel meant subtracting 3 from the battle, an advantage that was rapidly giving Omega dominance.
This one actually looks good even.
But only so long as their concentrated fire efforts remained consistent, and they could only remain consistent if she did not split her attack power in half. So, men died and fired, killed from behind by the enemies they were forbidden to pursue. The netherworld was flushed with the dead, but Omega could not feel their presence, nor could she hear their legion. Not until, suddenly, a small red line of script appeared in the corner of her vision, in the midst of her void-born duel with the Imperium.
Who messaged her?
Connection error detected.
Omega barely noticed it at first. It was someone else's problem, someone else's job. That changed quickly as the illuminating panels of hologram projectors which surrounded her began to fail. Their projected 3-dimensional screens going red and losing all detail one after another in quick.
Oh, is someone actually hacking her instead? Or hacking into the connection? Oh. And Ripoff Production, you mentioned something that makes it earlier. Tess doesn't care about us having surviving forces. She's only winning the battle. 0 care for the rest of the war. Yeah, that definitely is going to go bad later.
Succession. The same soon occurred on the monitors all of her supporting team were working on, the screens becoming crimson sheets with the word Airier written in white at the center.
Did they lose an important ship?
Omega said, looking around in confusion. The others did much the same, with Arcanian
hacking in,
slapping his console with a wide hand to try to coax it back into function. Sprout slowly lifted his face away from the console, the blood draining from his features.
Did the simulator break?
Omega added a moment later, just before the lights all suddenly shut down, a deep whine in the ship walls signaling the powering down of the main engine. The clones found themselves awash in the darkness.
Oh, they're under attack
Blind
directly
until
if the ship is going
suddenly
down.
Came back on. Another rising whine denoting the restart of the power systems as the ship came back online. No one came in for them. The door into the room did not open, and the glass observation center above them did not issue any commands, nor did its large glass window become any less opaque.
Now, is it only
Omega
hacking,
shrugged
or is there someone there in
nervously, looking
person?
back at the projectors as they began to flicker back into life, the screens on the support consoles following suit. But even after reactivating, they were blank.
System response request? Manual access mode?
Omega said to the
Okay, yeah, on that audio is actually pretty good, but sounds very bubbly. I have no idea the character's voice, so I can't say if that's accurate or not. But this entire scene, though, the only thing is, I don't know anyone on the Mechanicum side who would actually be able to do this. So I'm assuming it's either a new character or it's a bunch of red shirts who are going to serve as a very terrifying example of, oh no, this shit is real. Either way, it's pretty interesting.
The computer, nervousness clear in her voice. Was troubleshooting part of the simulation test now? The holograms did not respond to her at first, before a single word written in white text appeared, hovering before her.
Surrender.
Omega squinted
Die.
at the word and read it out loud.
Receiving.
Read Omega.
Is that a bit strange?
Asked Meek, the willowy clone cadet who stationed one of the lower consoles, the one to Omega's right.
Yeah, aren't the system framework responses normally in a larger text?
Sprout added, sitting right above Meek in one of the upper consoles.
Font looks different.
Also, it's in a different font too.
Oh, it
Ally
actually is a different
said
font
from
and
over Omega's shoulder.
size. Huh.
What are you guys whining about? Computer's probably got an upgrade that changed a few things. Let's get this error worked out. You know what is happening every second. We are cut off from the Armada, right?
Arcanian insisted,
Arc's right.
said Omega.
Oh, she didn't pick up on it. Oh, because all of them realize it's an actual fight, but she doesn't. And he almost gave the game away, and she didn't pick up on it. Ooh.
Think about it. This simulation has been more detailed and complex than any we've had thus far. I'm not even surprised the computers could not handle it. It only makes sense that they would have gotten upgrades before this game began.
She explained, unaware of how her teammates cringed, all of them knowing quite well that this was no simulation, and not a single one among them with the courage or motivation to tell her the truth, at least, not yet. Omega stretched and cracked her back a little before continuing.
Okay, system check. What is stopping us from resuming the operation?
Omega commanded, crossing her arms as she waited for a response. The previous message vanished and a single floating dot appeared in the air where it had been, blinking on and off for a few moments. Then it was replaced by another response, which Omega chose to read out loud.
Checking. What operation is not resuming currently?
The young clone said, eyebrows askew in confusion which tainted the tone of her voice as she read the response.
How can the computer not know its own operation?
Ally asked.
Did it just get wiped
voice
entirely, or was
puzzled.
it taken over?
Must be some kind of critical system error.
Well, that's definitely one way to put it.
Muttered.
Do you think we can still troubleshoot our way through this?
Asked Arcanian. Omega shrugged her shoulders and sighed, tapping her chin as Sprout bit his lip, a suspicion slipping serpentine and vile into his mind.
Resume command and control operations over the current Republic fleet action.
Omega began to say before Sprout suddenly...
Were they basically getting a backdoor through a phishing attempt? If that's actually how this goes, I'm laughing my ass off on this one. So I don't think Fan would go this way just because this is a level of nerdy cyber security know-how that is completely useless, probably. But the easiest way to get access to something is not to brute force it, not to be a great hacker, is to send someone a link and have them click on it to get into their account. So that seems like exactly what's happening right now. It's like, oh yes, you want to, slightly different font. It doesn't look like our normal entry. Let's click on it to get access to everything like we normally do and ignore any differences where it seems like someone with very good information technology services might take advantage of that. If that's the case, I'm laughing so hard
and
on
almost
this.
fell out of his console alcove.
Omega, wait.
He cried out.
Because she doesn't
Don't
know
tell
it's
it
not a
anything.
game.
The young clone
So she would
finished,
give them access because it's
but
just a
it was
game at
too
worst.
late now. The computer relayed the amount of her response that she had already spoken, and the dot returned, blinking once more.
Is she going to
Sprout,
give them the
what's wrong?
access codes?
Omega asked, befuddled by his outburst, but Sprout did not say anything. Eyes nailed to his console screen, and the blinking dot he saw there, waiting for a response. And
It's
soon,
audio-based.
the response came.
Found you?
Omega read, even more confused than before.
Okay, yeah, they're just
She
getting their
looked over at
location.
Sprout,
Not just
expecting
taking
him
over the
to
entire control
elaborate,
console.
but was shocked by the pained expression she found on his face.
Omega, this isn't a simulation. This is a real battle against the real Imperium.
And you're losing.
And I think the enemy just found us.
Sprout explained. And as if to punctuate his response,
He dies?
the ship suddenly shook violently.
Oh, it is a ship.
Omega almost
I thought they were on
fell
the
out of
planet
her
for some
command
reason.
platform and blinked rapidly, the pieces in her mind starting to form into the truth she had been refusing to see. She opened her.
Oh, that is probably the... And that explains a lot. The fact that Fan said refusing to see. That's why I'd almost thought that Omega did understand that this was a real simulation or a real fight going in, because some of the words acted and sounded as if they were describing, oh yeah, this is real people we're fighting against, we're simulated. Was Fan actually doing that from her perspective to talk about as if it's real, then taking a step back to enforce that it's not? Entirely possible. I'm not entirely sure. If Fan was still in the chat, I'd ask them, because that sounds like a good bit of doublethink written down. Either way, I'll choose to believe it because it sounds better this way. And there's really no downside to it.
Her mouth, but could not speak.
Because she knew and didn't want to
Tears
believe it.
beginning to rim her wide eyes as the profundity of her actions up to this point became clear.
And worse, without you
Sorry,
there, it's
Omega.
going to get worse for them.
I should have told you. One of us should have told you. But
No.
when Nalase chose to lie, we just assumed.
Sprout tried to explain, feeling an unexpected wetness in his own eyes. And as he spoke, the sound of Kaminoans and clones beginning to scream started to barely penetrate the thick walls of their command center. For indeed, the Imperium had found them, had been waiting to find them.
And they did.
And now that it had, the Imperium had sent an emissary bearing the Emperor's judgment
Which one?
and his mercy.
So are we getting an Evisor in here, a different one? Or... Fan, are you specifically doing an Evisor? Or is this something else? No. Unfortunately, I do need to cut this one here, mostly because there are things I need to adult today, and I hate that, but I have to do it. But also because I just... Normally, I'll just talk about the bits of art Fan chooses from the AI side, because it's like, okay, that's kind of cool. Some are bad, some are good. But then he specifically chose an image that looked like an Evisor at the end. And I'm like, okay, are we getting the one failed Evisor we know? Or are there now implications that there's more assassins we didn't know about? Either one could be good. And I can't find out right now because I have to go adult. Goddamn adulting. Also, people in the chat, specifically Berber, is asking me to watch the Palpatine video next week. Two of the outdoor cats are fighting, and they're probably going to need to get taken to the vet after this. That's not looking good. Shit. Not our girls, thankfully, but oof. Yeah. Either way, though, I probably need to go do something about that before there's a dead kitty in the street. That sucks. More importantly, I'm going to just... the The worst part is this is fan. There's a very good chance this is as much of that plot line we are going to get this episode. And I could find out by looking forward to get a thumbnail. But also it would then be a spoiler because I still have the audio on and I don't want to do that. So god damn it. I want to see more, but I can't. And fan mentioned Airier, catch the Palpatine vid if you can. It will help with what comes next. Maybe I'll watch it next week before the episode continues. I just need someone to give me a link in Discord because I will forget otherwise. I'm really bad about that. Yeah. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to go check on the cats outside, make sure they're not literally dying in the street. That sucks if that happens. Ugh. So for everyone watching, thanks. And I'm going to go run. See you guys next week. And please make sure to send me the link. If there's anything I missed, let me know. Or if there's a way to get fan to use the really good AI for scenery, because that seems to be a much better way to use it than some of the faces. The scenery actually was really cool when he did it for that one. I'll see you guys then. AI. I was going to say AI out. What the fuck? I'll see you guys later. Adios.